All right, hockey fans, Panther fans, Sharks fans, fans of this channel, fans of my good friend Nick's Twisted Wrister Hockey. Make sure you give his channel a shout, a check out. The dude is just straight up. Every time I think I got my channel together, I go look at his, and he stepped up his game again. Especially the thumbnails, man. It's like I'm looking at some of your thumbnails, and I'm thinking, I know that took him an hour. I know it.
I mean,
So
if we're doing a tier rankings of who creates the best thumbnails, I'm maybe like C tier. I've probably got 4 or 5 more years until I can actually get into the upper echelon.
if people knew what goes into it, you sit down with the idea for a thumbnail and you're like, okay, good, I'm done, and you look and it's been 45 minutes, and we're not joking, we're not joking. So, all right, subject of today's video is, and this is my favorite kind of video. This is my favorite type of video because I just get to ask questions, and Nick's the one that has to have all the answers. So it just works out perfectly for me. In case you guys are new to the channel, please do hit the subscribe button. I've left the link to Nick's channel in the description. If you've been around here for a while, you will notice some new toys here at the bottom. This is our first. I'm losing my StreamYard virginity as we speak right now. So the more toys, the more I learn about this software, we'll be able to have more toys coming around. So, subject of today's video, there's a few teams, there's a half dozen teams here in the NHL that some people might have thought we're going to be decent. Maybe we're going to make the playoffs, and a couple of teams that just nobody pegged to be anywhere near as good. And so I wanted to know why that is, and I figured we'll ask Nick because Nick's the smart one. Nick's the smart one of the bunch. So, yeah.
Well, here I had only one of these teams like squeaking into the playoffs. So I don't know exactly how much of an authority I am on this. But yet again, that's why we do this, right? Because we like being surprised. We like seeing stories emerge that we didn't see coming.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start in your division, Pacific. Vegas and Seattle. Let's just go at it. Now, Vegas obviously been good for in the past. Last year they just squeaked out. We weren't sure what we were going to see with them. The Kraken, what in just go. I got to hear this.
Yeah, I'm still trying to piece it together myself. The Kraken, when you look at their lineup, they don't have a star-studded top line, but they had a couple of key additions in the offseason and players who didn't start with them at the start of last season who are coming through quite well. So Matty Beniers, right now, if you were to pick the Calder Trophy winner, he would certainly be in that conversation. And it's not just his offense. He's good on the forecheck as well. He's taking face-offs and not doing too poorly with that either. Usually rookies struggle with that sort of thing. Andre Burakovsky is leading the team in scoring, where he was kind of a throwaway for the Avalanche, kind of expendable after what we saw in the postseason, right? They had, a lot of decisions they had to make. So
Right.
he signed with Seattle, and he's been great for them so far. I want to say he had the overtime winner in that crazy barn burner against the Kings where it was 9-8 in overtime.
Wow.
Justin Schultz, another great signing in the offseason. He has 13 assists as a defenseman. So he's contributing. Wow. Vince Dunn's contributing as well on the backside. Daniel Sprong came over midseason last year, and he's been excellent for them in terms of, getting some points on the board. Bjorkstrand came over in that trade with Columbus. So they do have a good amount of depth for forwards, and even their defense are starting to put up some points as well. Goaltending is still kind of a mystery for this team, so they changed their goaltending coach in the offseason. That team struggled a ton with both Drieger, and of course he had injury problems, and also Philip Grubauer. If there's some way that Philip Grubauer can get going, this team could actually hold, I think, second place in that division, unless like the Flames or the Oilers get hot and are starting to kind of build some momentum. But even so, Seattle has just had an excellent season so far, doing that on the back of Martin Jones for a good stretch as well, after he was, kind of statistically the worst goaltender for a number of years. Now, the one thing I will, and kind of piggybacking on that before we go to the next team, Seattle is the only team out of these 5 that is not in the top 6 in goals against average. They are just 18. So far, they've been relying on their offense a lot, whereas these other 4 teams that we'll discuss are all in the top 6 in goals against average.
Gotcha. So Vegas, 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 and I have a love, hate, love special relationship, of course, because I'm the Panthers guy, and there's a quaint little video of me smashing a jar of marshmallow fluff with a baseball bat that I still have, by the way, when we decided not only did we not want Riley Smith, but we were going to give them Jonathan Marchessault so they would take Riley Smith. It was unpleasant, to say the least. When I did my season preview before the year started, I looked at the team. I said, okay, okay. And then I looked at the goaltending, and I'm like, when you looked at their goaltenders combined, these guys hadn't played a full season. I said, how good can they be? And yet, here we are. So, again, explain.
I don't think it's so much rocket science with the Golden Knights. They had a ton of injuries last season. You see what's happening to the Avalanche right now. It was a similar story for the Golden Knights last year. You know, Mark Stone missed a ton of games. Jack Eichel was coming off a crazy surgery in the offseason. Riley Smith missed a ton of games. Alec Martinez, who's led the league in block shots, he missed a ton of time as well. So the writing was on the wall for Vegas to, I think, have a bounce back this year. Logan Thompson came in last year when the Golden Knights were, just kind of going through a bunch of goaltenders, and he did pretty well, I'd have to say. But he's built on that this season, especially with those defensemen healthy, right? So Alec Martinez has been playing. Pietrangelo has taken a leave of absence for personal reasons, but he's looked pretty good for them. And so this team looks more kind of like the team that we saw from maybe 2 seasons ago, even though they're with a different head coach, Bruce Cassidy, with the Boston Bruins. And that team was always really good when it came to keeping the puck out of the net. So even though I haven't seen Vegas a ton this year, I'm sure that he's implemented similar systems. And so that has helped them in terms of being a strong team in all 3 zones, essentially. And then, of course, Jack Eichel is looking more like Jack Eichel. He's, I think, over a point per game. You still have Mark Stone. You still have Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault. So, these guys are still in the primes of their career for now. And so altogether, and also considering kind of the division hasn't been very strong so far, they've been able to have a very comfortable lead in that division. We'll see how things go over time, but there's no reason why Vegas shouldn't be a top 3 team in that division.
Gotcha. All right. So, moving on to the East, we'll stay out of my division just yet. Now the Islanders. When I said Nick was the smart one, last year I picked the Islanders to win the Cup. So, there's that. But now the Islanders, when I looked at their roster before the season started, I said, they still got the guys. I mean, they made it to 2 Eastern Conference Finals in a row, and you looked at the roster, I was like, well, how were they bad? And then they get rid of Trotz, and Trotz didn't want to go anywhere. Was it just a matter of getting rid of the coaching, or was it a matter of those guys had burnt themselves out with all the playoff races and needed some, recuperation time? What do you think?
Probably so. I think the coaching change has made a big difference because, like you were saying, the roster is almost unchanged from the previous season. Yeah, they got Alexander Romanov in a trade, but otherwise they have still the same guns out there. But I will preface this with saying that before last season started, my Stanley Cup winner in my predictions was also the New York Islanders. I kid you not.
Wow.
Anyway, for them, it starts with goaltending. Elias, so it's interesting this year because you're seeing a handful of goaltenders, right? Vasilevsky, Saros, Shesterkin, Markstrom, Demko. These guys have dropped off this year, at least so far. But one guy in the upper echelon of goaltending has not, and that's Ilya Sorokin. He's been outstanding this year. And even though Linus Ullmark, we'll talk about him. I mean, if you're going to ask me to put a bet on who wins the Vezina at this point, I would say it's Ilya Sorokin. Look at this: 927 save percentage, 2.33 goals against average, and has 2 shutouts. Wow. And behind him, Semyon Varlamov, who's played a third of those games, 922 save percentage, 2.52 goals against average, 1 shutout as a backup. So, schematically, this team, I think, has kind of tapped back into what made them successful initially under Trotz. And the good thing is that they're still getting productivity from their top guns and also some of the secondary scorers as well. Barzell has had a nice bounce back after last year. He's already over a point per game. Oliver Wahlstrom's, he's actually starting to kind of put it together, even though he doesn't get as much opportunity as maybe he was projected to be. So yeah, this team is kind of back on course. Noah Dobson, a good offensive defenseman. This team, I don't know if they're going to necessarily be top 3 in that division, because you have to contend with Pittsburgh. You have to contend with this crazy Devils team we'll talk about. And, you can't count out some of the teams that have been there before and succeeded, like the Rangers or even the Capitals, if they were to get healthy.
Right. Yeah, and that leads me to the Devils. Now, I don't recall seeing too many people when people were talking about what team might be able to slip up into the playoffs and make it over maybe a Boston or a Washington or Pittsburgh. The majority of the names I saw was Detroit and Ottawa. Those were the 2 names that I saw being thrown around a lot. And we'll get to that situation in a second. But now I did see one thing when I was looking at some stats last week. I believe it was the goaltending stats. And I was looking at, their goaltending has been outstanding, ridiculous. But, I think they're facing like barely even 20 shots a game. Speak on that, because I think I haven't watched, obviously, any Devils games because I'm a Panther guy. But, they're not allowing any shots.
You got to watch this team. I had no idea. A couple years ago, I said maybe the Devils could take that step forward and get in as a wild card, and then I gave up on them. Yeah. They are a incredibly fun team to watch. So even though their goals against is really low, they have the second best in the NHL at 2.19, and the fact that they're surrendering, I think the fewest shots against per game, it's because they kind of remind me of like the Eastern Conference equivalent of the Avalanche. They are relentless in pressuring in the opponent's zone. They really are. On the back check, as soon as that puck tries to get through into the neutral zone, they're right there. And it's not just, the gritty players. It's the top guys for them too. Like Jack Hughes is one of those players. Nico Hischier is one of those players. Yegor Sharangovich is one of those players. And Jesper Bratt. So these guys are excelling tremendously offensively. And I think that's just because of their work ethic. And they're fast, and they're a joy to watch. I really do recommend checking them out if you haven't already. And on the subject of goaltending, this kind of reminds me of what we saw in Washington last year, where there was an injury to Samsonov, or he had gotten pulled, and Vitek Vanacek, he comes in and he takes over. And that's what he's doing here as well, while Mackenzie Blackwood has been injured. So, that is kind of his modus operandi. So he's looking great. Akira Schmid, I've never even heard of him. He's played a handful of games, and at least statistically, he looks great. And let's not also forget, they have an associate coach behind their bench in Andrew Brunette.
What? Who? I'm. Your mic must have cut out. I can't. What? What? Yeah. Okay. That's how it's gonna be, huh? Okay. No, that's cool. That's cool. Oh man, I didn't see that coming. I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't see that coming. Nick, that's it. Nick is just like, yeah, I got him. Oh, I didn't see that coming. That was good. Yeah, no, that's true. They got that guy, the guy that we don't have. Yeah. So on to the next team. Okay. So I've got a few Boston fans that frequent my streams. One particular by the name of Raven, and when they made their coaching change last year, when the whole thing went down, he was apoplectic, to say the least. And the general feeling I got from the fan base was like, that's it. We're going to suck. We're probably not going to make the playoffs. We're old. That's it. It's over. I would have preferred that, to be honest, because that would have been one less team fighting with my Panthers, which we ain't fighting with Boston now. We're scratching and clawing to try and make a playoffs. But to me, this looks very much like a group of guys that were just happy to have a different coach. I mean, how does a group that old get that much better that fast? It usually goes backwards.
Not to mention, they had some key injuries to start the year, too. Charlie McAvoy was out. Brad Marchand was out. Taylor Hall was injured leading up to the season opener. Matt Grzelcyk was out. Honestly, Jaws, I really don't know. I think that one thing that's helping them out is that they don't just have to attack with the top line. So, like, David Pastrnak has been playing on the second line. And, like Pavel Zacha has been slotted in there, and David Krejci coming back, I think 36 or 37 years old, and that's working wonders for the forward group. Nick Foligno is having a nice kind of renaissance season, and also you have Taylor Hall kind of taking a step forward from where he was last year. On the backside, I mean, yeah, if I had to drill this down personnel-wise, I would say it's David Pastrnak with the forward group, and it's Hampus Lindholm on the backside. He could maybe get Norris Trophy consideration, and that's with Charlie McAvoy on his team as well.
Right.
So Lindholm was offensively driving a ton for them to start the season, and he's always been known as one of the better shutdown defensemen in the NHL. So I'm still trying to piece this together myself, but they are just tremendous across the board. Special teams, goals against average, just 2.08 per game. That's insane. And this is without even getting Jeremy Swayman going, whereas he's kind of projected to be their sort of 1A goaltender. So Ullmark right now, I think I saw that he has like a .939 save percentage and like 1.64 goals against or something just ludicrous. I don't expect that to stay the course, but that doesn't mean they still can't get great goaltending from somebody like Swayman.
Right.
I have no idea how they're doing this, honestly. Whether or not they maintain first place in that division, because Toronto, you want to talk about good defense, they've been really good recently. Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov certainly earned kudos for that. Right. But Boston, this does not look like a team that is settling for a wild card. They mean business.
They mean business, absolutely. Okay, just a couple random questions because we've touched on the 5. Out of the teams that are surprising us right now, if I give you $100 and you were going to take that $100 and bet on one of them to choke and miss the playoffs, who would it be?
Seattle plays in the weakest of the divisions. Edmonton, if Evander Kane can come back with a few weeks to spare in the season, Calgary, right? If they find a way to get Huberdeau going, if Markstrom can, at least hold a candle to what Dan Vladar is doing. The Kings, I'm not overly impressed by them, but in terms of rosters and coaching, I think that they can at least measure up with Seattle if we look at the course of an 82-game season. So I would say it would be the Kraken. And also you have to consider that the Central, you're starting to see the Wild make some improvements. And nobody's talking about the Predators, which surprises me. I know they got spanked by Tampa last night, but they've figured things out as well over the last month after being terrible in the first month. So it's going to be hard for Seattle to get in. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And last thing, switching back over to the East, do you think, we got Washington, we got my Panthers, we got Pittsburgh, 3 teams that made the playoffs last year that right now they're not in. Who? And this is not a trick question, but who out of those 3 do you think 1, 2, 3? Who makes it?
All I got to say is that the previous 3 seasons, I don't think any team in the NHL was decimated by injuries as much as the Penguins. And the Penguins last year were competing for that division lead for much of the season. They've been healthy for most of the season.
Right.
It's got to be them.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Yeah, that's funny. I didn't realize we had both picked the Islanders last year. Wow. We won't talk about who I picked because it's not over yet. It's not over yet.
Who did you have coming out of the West?
Oh, I've completely sold my soul for a Panthers Flames finals. There's nothing. If that doesn't happen, I shut down the channel and I'm gonna do an OnlyFans or something. It has to happen, because that's the only way. I just saw there was just too many Calgary won the trade tweets for me. It just something went off in my head. And by the way, I'd like to mention that Stu and I were having a conversation this morning about Huberdeau and Uyghur and Tkachuk. And I came up with the broad idea that Tkachuk has outscored Huberdeau and Uyghur combined. And somebody came on to the comments and reminded me that Brandon Montour has outscored Huberdeau and Uyghur combined. So
wow.
I'm feeling pretty good about that trade right now. I just like to see a few more points in the standings.
Speaking of Kachuk, what a great goal he scored in transition last night. That was
Man.
beautiful. Wasn't it?
Yeah, if either one of us could do that, we wouldn't be here, brother. I could tell you that right now. You know what I mean? That was crazy. So, all right. Appreciate you taking the time to join us, Nick. This was fun. This was good. And make sure you guys check out Nick's channel. Nick's gone full time. Okay, and I know what that means. So make sure you check out his channel. Give him a subscription. All right, if you can support him any possible way, absolutely do it. Even if it's just stopping by for 5 minutes, saying hi, and hitting that like button during the stream, it means a lot to us. It genuinely does. And like I always say, he's got the best voice in the business. I don't know how you don't have 100,000 subscribers already. So thanks for joining us. And as far as this channel is concerned, you've seen the banners. Kyle and I will be back streaming tomorrow. And then Sunday, do not miss Sunday. The Panther game starts, and then about 45 minutes later, the Dolphin game starts. And Kyle and I are going to be streaming both games at the same time. And there's nowhere else you're going to get a hockey game or football game streamed at the same time with the 140-pound St. Bernard interrupting the entire process. There's nowhere else to get that kind of entertainment. So it's not to be missed. All right, everybody. We appreciate the support, and we'll see you again soon.